What sort of stuff are US doing differently in AI that maybe the UK can learn from?
It's interesting. A lot of people said, "Why are you going to President's inauguration?"
Yeah, how proud does that make you feel to be able to just represent Doncaster on a global scale?
Incredibly proud.
And how did that initial relationship start with the government?
Interesting. Initially on a very local level.
So when did Call 360 come to life, and in simple terms, what is it?
So in simple terms is if you're a business today and you're manually listening to calls, Call 360 takes all of that away from you.
Was there ever a moment where you just sat down and thought, we're onto something?
Yes, but no.
What would you say is like the craziest thing you've used AI for?
I think the craziest thing I've used AI for is
What can we expect from automated analytics and Mark Taylor in the near future?
in terms of our development of our tech, it never stops. Hi, we're back with the Automated Analytics podcast for season 2. You'll notice that we've got these great surroundings. We've upgraded to a new studio, but this time round for this episode, it's not me that's doing the questions. I'm being asked the questions by Jordan. Please do like and subscribe.
It's been 10 months since you've launched season 1 of the Automated Analytics podcast. Just give us a little bit of a recap of what's been happening.
Yeah, it's been an amazing 10 months. Some parts surreal. So from a business point of view, we've continued our growth at 100% year on year now for 4 years, which, sometimes we make it look easy, but it's been hard work that's got us there to that good growth. But then there's been some real highlights, like going to the President's inauguration in January, running our own event at the House of Parliament, being invited to the House of Lords, being invited to advise the government through the APPG on AI regulation. So it's been a real fascinating 11 months, since we did our first season of podcasting.
So the inauguration, just tell us a little bit about that then. What sort of stuff are US doing differently in AI that maybe the UK can learn from?
It's interesting. A lot of people said, "Why are you going to President's inauguration?" Well, first thing first, I was invited to go. And as an owner of a British-American software business, we've got several thousand clients in the States. I thought it was super important to be there. One, to understand the geopolitical landscape in America, but two, to represent Doncaster. Doncaster, we're putting on the global stage. We're a global leader in AI, but we're not the only ones. There's about 20 AI companies ranging from Thales, I think that's how you pronounce it, through to some startups, and us included. And so I was very proud to represent Doncaster and Britain going over there. And it was fascinating because very early on I met Trump Jr. He pretty much told us that the inauguration was going to be locked down because of the weather. And so therefore it gave us an opportunity to network. And it was almost like corporate America had gone to Washington for the inauguration. And just the amount of people and networking that I did over the 4 days, it was absolutely fascinating. I really wish there was an inauguration every year that enabled me to do that. But we even ended up with some clients out of the networking. But it was just a fantastic opportunity to see what was going on, but also what's interesting about the US is that they are some way behind the UK. The UK really is a leader in AI. I sometimes don't think we know it. And I think the US is looking to the UK in terms of AI development. And certainly when you see the people that are in Silicon Valley, you've got a lot of British representation there. And so I think America is actually looking to the UK and to Europe, and they're on a bit of an acquisition spree at the moment. And so I think America will eventually catch up as they normally do, because they really are, a great innovator. Their culture for innovation, they celebrate failure as much as success. And I think it's one of the things that we're very good at creating startups, I think, in this country, but we're not very good at kind of fostering the growth of those startups, and sometimes I worry that we may lose one or two of our unicorns or larger companies to American investment. But America is such a big market; it's the biggest consumer market in the world. And for us to be there, and the growth that we're seeing in America, yes, we're growing at 100% year on year globally, but I think our growth in America is something like 300% year on year. It's off the charts. It really is, and we're literally scratching the surface in America.
So one thing I took away from that was I wanted to represent Doncaster. With the product that you're building and the industry that you're in, why Doncaster? Why not New York? Why not Dubai? Why not Silicon Valley? Like, what is it about Doncaster?
I think Doncaster picks you, if I'm honest with you. I moved here 15 years ago to be closer to my children and my then partner. And when I came to set up automated analytics, I'd been in private equity. I'd done 3 private equity gigs, but I was working away from home, and I really wasn't enjoying it. And particularly the last kind of year in my last private equity gig, which was a company called Evander Glazing Locks in Norwich, beginning up at 4 o'clock on a Monday morning, traveling 3 hours, 3 hours 20 if I got stuck behind a tractor to get to Norwich. It wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy it. And when I came to set up the business, we had an ex-Apple person join us, an ex-Googler join us. Neither of them wanted to work in London. The whole reason for setting up the office in Doncaster was they didn't want to commute anymore. And so I think Doncaster picked me, and it was probably about 2 years ago. We just set up the American business. I came back and I was really jet lagged, and I'd been invited to do a speech at Sheffield University, but in Doncaster. And I was on stage and it was raining, and I thought, God, where's the Florida sunshine gone that I'd just been at? I was really badly jet lagged, thinking, what am I doing here? And I said, we're Doncaster's best kept secret. And Dan Fell, who's the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, really challenged me on that. Said, stop saying it. It's down to you. Go out there and get it. And I'm a big believer in that. If you want to grow your business, it's down to you to go out and generate the revenue and get that business coming in. So for me, he challenged me about, right, we'll represent Doncaster. Don't talk it down, talk it up. And Rosie, who's the ex-MP for Doncaster Central, pretty much echoed those thoughts and really pushed me. And I thought, well, why not Doncaster? Why don't we see it as a growth zone? It's the home of the Industrial Revolution with the trains, and it's great for us because we're not necessarily competing against other local companies in AI. We're actually competing against, digital hubs in Sheffield and Leeds, where people are commuting from Doncaster to go to Sheffield or Leeds. So from a staffing point of view, it makes sense. But also just that can-do attitude. When I met Damien Allen, who's the CEO of Doncaster Council, I think within 15 minutes, we got a mutual understanding that I wasn't going to give up, and that the new Gateway 1 building needed to be a digital hub, if not an AI hub. And he's been super supportive. And when you have a collection of people around you in Doncaster, like yourself, Jordan, when you and I first met, I was super impressed with your ambition and your growth plans. You want to be part of that. And for me, Doncaster's given me everything. It's given me a beautiful son. We adopted a little boy 10 years ago, Joshy, is one of the best things that happened to me, my daughter as well. So I've got a lot to thank for Doncaster, but representing Doncaster on a global stage, I'm so proud, and so proud to say that we're made in Doncaster.
I'm going to say that must be a pinch me moment for when you're literally shouting about at Doncaster all the time. You're hosting these big events like we saw you last week. Yeah, how proud does that make you feel to be able to just represent Doncaster on a global scale?
Incredibly proud, but I'm only as good as the team behind me. And my colleagues, the people that we employ, are my biggest asset. So whether that is, our CTO, Ben, who's out in Asia at our coding lab out there, Jason, our Chief Operating Officer, who runs America for us in Charlotte, or the senior team in the UK, Josh, Sophie, Adam, without them, this business wouldn't be as good as it is. I'm only the front man at the end of the day. I've got to have a really good team behind me. And for me, I get more pride representing them and showing the world the good work they do than anything else. But also, the inauguration, it was a bit of a pinch me moment. I'm here representing Doncaster on a global scale. It doesn't happen every day, but it was a great experience.
You've also been working with the government on AI regulation. Talk us a little bit about that experience.
So the government has been talking about regulating AI for some time. So you've had the European Commission who've regulated AI, and to me, they've gone too extreme. And I understand why AI needs to be regulated. I firmly believe it does, because an AI algorithm is all about predicting. It's predicting the future in some way, shape, or form. So our platform predicts the outcome of a call, predicts the what you need to bid on Google moving forward, or Facebook. So it's a prediction tool, right? But our accuracy, we've got the highest accuracy of our data classification than anybody in the category, and we've got the lowest word error rate, which is what transcription engines run off of anything globally. So our model's pretty darn accurate. But if you're making a prediction based on a model that isn't accurate, so there's an African nation that is using a malaria app to predict whether you've got malaria or not, it's less than 50% accurate. So the odds are that if we use this app, either one of us would have malaria when we clearly don't. That's what you've got to regulate against, because, making a decision like that, you can't let AI do that, and therefore the accuracy, the ethics of the model, should you even be using a malaria app that is only at 50% accuracy. America have kind of gone the other way. There's a little bit of regulation, although the Texas bill that they brought out recently is trying to add more regulation into AI, so less profiling using AI models, which I think is a good way to go. Britain hasn't done anything yet, but what Britain tends to do is they tend to come up with the gold standard of regulation. My worry is speed and time in terms of getting something implemented. And the first stance was that they, were going to let individual, if you like, industry bodies decide what they were going to do, which I didn't think was a consistent way to achieve good regulation. So started to come up with it. So we've been working with Sally Jameson, our local MP. We've been working with Lord Ranger in the House of Lords. We've been attending the APPG, which is your party group, cross-party group. We've been contributing to select committees to try and show the government a way of regulating AI that doesn't stifle innovation, but gives people the confidence that, whatever the AI is being used is actually accurate. And I think they've got it right in most circumstances, except when it comes to copyright. I mean, when Elton John turns round and calls the Labour government some choice words, I could understand why he's upset, because from a copywriting point of view, if you're an artist and your music can get sampled and you don't earn a royalty out of that, well, that's someone's livelihood, and I don't think that's fair. So I think he made a very, very good point, and it was very to the point, was Elton John. But when Elton John gets up and says something, you take note. And I think his idea about allowing artists to opt in, and if you do sample their music using AI, then you win a commission off it. I think that's a really good idea. But I do think we need to be very, very careful that we're not using AI, to profile people, because I think that's where it starts to get a little bit dangerous. Because what you're going to understand is AI is written based on a model. If that model isn't accurate, so if you take the BMI calculation for your body mass index, basically, that originally was based off 2,000 white males. So it won't be accurate if you're female originally. If you're of colour, it won't be accurate because it's based off white males. So if your model is based off a subset of the population, it won't necessarily be accurate for you. And that's where I think the risk is.
How do you even create that connection with the government? What made automated analytics get involved with the government? You text me, you sat there, you sending me pictures with different MPs, and I'm thinking, how has a guy from Doncaster created this unbelievable network? And how did that initial relationship start with the government?
Initially on a very local level. So it was a case of I'd invited Ed Miliband and Dame Rosie, who was now a Dame, to the offices to start the conversation. And what I realised was very, very quickly was that government regulation could affect my business. And so therefore it's very much about ensuring that I built connections into Westminster. And then I basically just started going to Westminster. So any excuse, any event I could go to network is what I would do. And then I met Lord Ranger at the end of last year, he was actually the guy that was responsible for getting the Oyster card on the Underground, very, very much into tech, very interesting guy. I met him late last year, and then he came with me to inauguration. And I think very quickly we realised we had the formations of a great relationship, and it's aligning yourself with people that can help you navigate Westminster, because it's quite small. There's not that many MPs when you think about it, but I think I purposely have gone down to Westminster, if that makes sense. So we do run an event at the House of Parliament every year where we take over the pavilion, which is a hospitality room at Parliament. We invite various MPs along. Last year we had Ed but we always had the Undersecretary for AI, Farrell Clark, who is the current AI minister. I met her a few weeks ago. We're hoping to get her up to Doncaster soon to show her the AI industry here. And it's very much, you've got to go and get it. And I've always, I say this to my kids actually, go out and get it. If you really want something, go and get it. Don't sit back, don't wait for it to happen, because it probably won't. And so for me, realising the impact government could have, and I'd never done this before, but what I did do was go out and make sure I networked with the right people and got known, within Westminster and pushed. I challenged Ed. We had the Chamber of Commerce Members of Parliament question time, and I was the first person to ask a question. Said, Ed, AI regulation is worrying me. You need to get me into the government, and he got me introduced to Peter Kyle. So sometimes it is, is about demanding access to these people in a nice way.
Seems like you've had a hectic past 10 months. What would you say has surprised you the most from the last 10 months? Because that is, it's not normal what you're doing.
I think that we're a global leader, and I think it suddenly hit me because in AI there's essentially two metrics, which is we've developed a transcription engine with Sheffield University. That transcription engine, there's only 5 in the world, and we've got one of them, right? So we're up against Amazon, OpenAI, and Google. Okay, and there's this thing called a word error rate. So when you transcribe speech to text, how many errors have been made? So the lower the score, the higher the accuracy. For example, we've looked at Amazon Web Services, and there's been some research published on them. They have a word error score of 20%, between 20 and 22%. Our word error score is less than 6%. So from a speech to transcription point of view, we've got one of the world's most accurate engines. Then when you look at our data classification engine, which we use to classify data, once you've transcribed it, that runs at 95% accuracy. We created a compliance module which scores a telephone call based on your individual, compliance tree or your individual compliance process. The first time we ran it, it was 85% accurate. Other people's models are very, not even 60% accurate first time. Now runs at 93% accuracy. So understanding that we're a global leader, I think, really was the shot of lightning. But then really getting ourselves out there, really only until about 2 years ago, I'd run the business for about 8 years, did I want to put my head above the parapet, because I was very worried about, if someone understands our tech, will they be able to steal it? Will they be able to copy it? And what I realised, and again, it was a conversation with Peter Danenberg, who's the number 2 at Google AI in California, and we were chatting about, could the model be copied? And it's actually down to the data. We've got 8 years worth of data. That can't be replicated. So the reason why the model is so accurate is because the amount of data that's gone through that model, you just cannot replicate it. And so for us, it was very much about, really getting ourselves above the parapet in terms of getting ourselves known. And I think, again, a lot of people can't believe that we're from Doncaster. And I was on Times Radio a couple of months ago talking about AI. And a lady contacted me through LinkedIn and said it was refreshing. I was walking home through the park in Edinburgh, and it was refreshing to hear Doncaster's name mentioned and not Shoreditch. And it's great the work that you're doing. And Doncaster shouldn't hold anybody back, in my opinion. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And so for me, it's been that I think realization that we are a global leader, justifiably, and really using that, not only to help our clients hire better people, but also drive things for Doncaster as well.
When I asked you what surprised you the most, I thought you was going to say getting a call up to test an Italian race team car.
Well, yeah, that was about 4 weeks ago. It was quite funny because TB karting. So I race go-karts. The ones that do about 70 miles an hour, actually. We were actually trying to work out how we could make it do 100 miles an hour. TB karting contacted me, and I did my first race for them at the weekend. Could have gone a bit quicker, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, to get a phone call from, hey, do you want to race our go-karts? They're Italian, they're pretty cool looking. Do you want to join a team type of thing? I was expecting that at my time of life. I expect that when I was like 15 or 16, but not now.
not your age, yeah. So look, we've had a bit of a catch up what you've been doing the past 10 months. I want to go back to young Mark. I want to know about what were you like as a kid? I know you you went to the same school in West Midlands as Jim Shark owner Ben Francis, right?
Yeah, I went to South Bromsgrove High School, yeah.
Just tell us a little bit about, what kind of kid were you?
So I had ridiculously bucked teeth. I had to have braces on, and I think I was very much happy-go-lucky. I had two very, very supportive parents. It was all about hard work. So if I wanted, the latest Nike trainers, I had to go and work for them. I didn't get them.
What did you do? What did you do when you had to go out and work for them?
I did a paper round.
Paper round, yeah.
So it's the first job I did. I think I was helping my brother, actually, underage, unfortunately. But I was helping my brother do his paper round on a Saturday, Sunday, which he used to pay me, I think it was about £1. And then I got my own paper round. And I still remember it today. I went to Bromsgrove Sports Lines and bought a pair of Nike Bongo. They were blue with a white tick on, £27.99 were my first Nikes. And I thought it looked pretty cool. I managed to talk my dad into allowing me to get a T-shirt at the same time. So I absolutely looked the bomb when I walked up to the Spar supermarket in the village I grew up in a place called Barnt Green. But yeah, I went to South Bromsgrove High School, and I had to work very, very hard at school. I struggled a lot. I was pretty good at maths. But I wasn't so good at English, although I was quite creative. I really struggled. And then I did my 11 plus. And I think that's when I had my first, if you like, below confidence hit, was that I got accused of cheating in my 11 plus. Now, back in the day, it's multiple choice. So with multiple choice, you got a chance of getting it right, just on the law of averages, but you don't have to write anything down. You just tick a box. I remember Mrs. Allen, my teacher at the time, pulled me into the science lab at What Close School, which I now think is called St John's School, I think it is. And she showed me my results compared to another lad who, my results were the fourth highest in the school. He was the third highest, but I was sitting near him. And so the accusation was made that I was cheating, and I was distraught, absolutely distraught. It's not even in my psyche to cheat. It's like with the go-kart racing you mentioned. I'd rather finish second and not cheat than win and cheat, if you get what I mean. Because where's the fun in that? So for me, it really hit me. And what was interesting was it set off a cycle of a lot of rejection. And what I mean by that rejection is I then went to high school. I was put into higher class, in my opinion. Because I really struggled. And Mrs. Allen she said to me at the time, she said, I think it's something to do with your writing, but I can't tell. My writing was very jumbled up. It was quite messy at the time. And then when I got to high school, I was put into a higher class. So I was put down to study French and German. So I struggle with spelling in English, let alone trying to spell, in French and German. I really struggled. And they pulled me down a set or two at high school, which really sapped my confidence. So you can imagine I've got buck teeth. I've just been royally kicked twice in the space of 12 months. It was quite tough, but it made me resilient, and I wanted to prove the doubters wrong. So I remember when I sat my GCSEs, I was predicted to fail all of them. I wouldn't be offered a place at sixth form. The night before sixth form started, I managed to negotiate with Mr. Clements a place at South Bromsgrove Sixth Form College. And I remember him saying to me, I don't think I'm doing you any favours letting you in. And what he didn't realise was, and I don't know if he may have mentioned it, but that was all the motivation I need, because I'm going to absolutely show you what I'm made of, and I'm actually going to show you that I've made the right decision by staying on at sixth form. So again, predicted to fail my A-levels. Didn't get any university offers because I was predicted to fail. And so passed my A-levels, actually did a better job than other people that I was rated not to do so well. Then managed to get a place at university. So originally I was going to go to the Isle of Wight Technical College because my parents owned a bungalow in the Isle of Wight. I thought, free rent, that'd be good. But then Cheltenham University offered me a degree, and I went and did a degree at university. But again, I still struggled. And one of the things I realised was to make myself different when I went out and looked for a job was that I wanted to get work experience. How could I do that? And what was really interesting was when I was at South Bromsgrove High School, I had a business studies teacher called Mrs. Gull, and she really fostered my, if you like, my like of marketing and sales and business. And I'd worked out that if I'd taken business studies, I could go and do projects on Formula One teams. So I pretty much processed to kind of visit all the Formula One teams in the UK, doing various different projects on them. And let's be honest with you, it was a very, very easy call to choose business studies, because it was either business studies or music, and I'm tone deaf and I can't play an instrument. So, so business studies chose me in a way. It was either that or music, and I'm tone deaf and can't play an instrument. So I think business studies chose me in a way, but it enabled me to really get insight into, and one of my passions is Formula One. And so when I went to university, I actually started my own PR agency looking after various different race drivers. So Cristiano D'Amata, who raced for Toyota in Formula One, when he's in Formula 3, I did some photography for him. A couple of the race drivers I looked after, was British touring car team looked after. I didn't really get paid, but it was enough to pay for petrol and various bits and pieces. But it started me on a road to really, okay, fine. So academically, I might not be the strongest, but by sheer hard will and determination, I can get there. So, I went to university, and it was only in my finals that my international marketing lecturer saw I'd written something, and he says, right, do me a favour, write that same sentence, but do it on yellow paper. And I wrote it on the yellow paper, and he compared the two, and one was like, missing loads and loads of words and letters jumbled around. The other one was perfect. He says, right, I want you to write your all your exams on yellow paper. And up until that point, I was struggling to even get 50% mark. I got 93% for international marketing. And it kind of set me on a path to make me realise that okay, I might be limited in terms of my ability to get letters right, which is why I type a lot. I have to reread stuff quite a lot to make sure. I like to use voice notes quite a bit. I also love meeting people. It's one of the things that I really like, rather than corresponding with people. So that really, that whole experience really gave me the motivation. And it's funny because I don't know if you've ever seen The Last Dance. You look at Michael Jordan, and I'm not comparing myself to Michael Jordan, by the way, who's a great athlete. I'm not. Let's be honest with you. But when you look at great sports people, a lot of their motivation is the world's against them. So you look at Lewis Hamilton, the world's against him. Look at Michael Jordan in Last Dance, the world's against him. And often I do think back to that Mr. Clements conversation of, I don't think I'm doing you a favour, letting you into sixth form. That was all the motivation I need to kind of prove him wrong. And hopefully I've proven him wrong in many ways. And, there's still certain words I really struggle to spell. I get the words jumbled up. But I've got some very forgiving colleagues, clients, and shareholders that I think allow me the grace of not always writing something perfectly.
Back to school, and the high school days. Have you got any memories of you actually feeling that entrepreneurial ambition? Did you want to be a business owner back in school?
Always.
Wanted to.
It's an interesting one, because when you look at my family history, so there's two families: Taylor, which obviously is my father's name, and Redwood, which is my mother's maiden name. There used to be George Taylors. They were silversmiths during the 20s. They then got into making essentially bomb parts during the war. Afterward, they went into the automotive industry. And it's only recently, actually, I've been finding more about my family history and spent a lot more time with my father since my mother's passed away. And some of the stories he shared with me about my grandfather, Austin Taylor, it's been quite heartwarming to hear how he was an entrepreneur. He was very giving, very focused. And so I think that entrepreneurial spirit has come from both sides of the family, because my grandfather on my mother's side was salesperson for BSA, and even lived in Sheffield he moved up from Birmingham to Sheffield for a couple of years because he's involved in the steel industry. And also I think a lot of it is the influence you have from your parents. I think your parents, your teachers are your biggest influence, because they're the people you spend the most time with. Parents are always, my mum was, I'll go halves with you. You earn half, I'll put the other half. And that work ethic has always been distilled in me. But whenever there was a project at school and I remember, I think this was when we were around 16, we had to do, create our own business and try and, generate some money for charity, and I was always the one that was organising things, always the one that wanted to do it, and setting up my own PR business. You'd think that'd be really difficult to do. I just went to Donington Park one day, got talking to somebody who said, "Do you know what? I've got a few race drivers that I can introduce you to that need help with writing press releases." Obviously, I didn't mention I was dyslexic at the time. And I went home that night and created my first press kits, and went back the next day to Donington Park and ended up with 4 or 5 clients out of it. And so, sometimes it's been, a big believer in fate, but also sometimes it's just been sheer hard work and determinedness, and what's the worst they can do? Say no. It's not too difficult to deal with. So for me, that entrepreneurial spirit was really fostered through my parents, but then learning about my family, it's been part of my family for some time, and I'm very proud of that fact to carry it on.
We've gone through school, gone through, university, diagnosed with dyslexia. You've then set up a PR business for racing drivers, which involves writing.
Yep.
And then we sort of move into the first job role. Was that in Dudley?
Oh, God, Dudley. Now, I've got my father to blame for this. So I'd finished university. I hadn't lined anything up. I was going to take a year off and go travelling, and then my father spotted a job in the Birmingham Post for a marketing coordinator with a company called Regal Hotels that I'd never heard of, and it was based in Dudley in a hotel called the Ward Arms Hotel, which I think is still there, and it had an Irish pub downstairs, and so I went for the job and got it, and so. Yeah, I got to experience the inner workings of Dudley very, very quickly. And it was a great job for me because they pretty much gave me loads of autonomy and an Irish pub in Dudley to run, which, was an interesting challenge. I remember I came to work one day and the radiator was missing because someone had taken it the day before. And so that was interesting. And also, working during the day in marketing and then working in the bar on like a Friday, Saturday night, was really good fun. But what running a hotel teaches you is, I think, entrepreneurism, because you've basically got a box and you've got to fill it. And if you don't fill it there and then, you've lost that revenue opportunity. So whether it's a hotel room, the leisure club, the meetings and events, the bar, the restaurant, is very entrepreneurial. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I was lucky that I met the CEO, a guy called Charles Holmes, who I actually switched name places with someone else so I could sit next to him because I'd found out that he was really into motor racing and had got this idea about getting our suppliers to pay sponsorship to sponsor, because we were launching a new brand called Chorus Hotels. And so I switched name places, and he sat down next to me and says, "Oh, you're unlucky. I'm Charles Holmes, the CEO. How are you?" And I didn't want to say, "Yeah, I know exactly who you are. I switched name places." I did tell him a few years afterwards what I'd done, and he laughed about it. But again, entrepreneurial spirit. I realised he was big into motor racing. He wanted to do something, to raise the profile of the brand. And so we sold advertising space to our suppliers to then fund the brand marketing of Chorus Hotels. And we sponsored the Vauxhall, I think, in the first year. The second year we had a partnership with Lotus, which was super successful. But it was one of those opportunities for me, again, to show my entrepreneurism. We got a bunch of marketing for free, whether it was Vauxhall, Lotus or wherever, and got really good return on investment. And then I then was approached to go and work for a startup with Microsoft, a company called Vertical Net, which I'd never heard of before. It was in this thing called IT, which I thought, well, that's just computers, isn't it? And it was brilliant because they paid for me to go to America 3 times, I think. It was my first experience in San Francisco, which was mega. But whilst I worked with some really, really talented individuals, I didn't particularly enjoy working for it was a joint venture between, I think, BT and Microsoft. But I stuck it out for a year. We did very, very well. And then I went back into hotels and worked for Hilton. And I have to say, I had 2 brilliant bosses in Hugh Taylor and John Phillip. John Phillip was very much hard taskmaster, operations guy. I worked or I ran the marketing for the Central North Division of Hilton. And he was brilliant for me because he kept my feet on the ground. I remember I got a colleague feedback score of 100%, and he absolutely ripped into me because he said that's the worst score you could get because it can only go down. Thanks. Thanks for motivation. Whereas Hugh Taylor was very much a classic marketeer, and he taught me about partnerships. And Hilton were brilliant for me. And I think it's why I support our colleagues the way I do, because for me, it's all about development and developing you. You know, I'm not the perfect CEO at the end of the day. I know I'm not. I know there's areas that I need to improve. And I mean, if you look at Ben Frost at Gymshark, you know, he was the CEO, stepped down for 2 years, you know, and really went and developed himself into being a brilliant CEO that he is now. I mean, that takes, you know, a lot of dedication and commitment. I think that's brilliant. You know, there's some real honesty and some real transparency there. And so with Hilton, they sent me to the Lausanne Business School and really developed me. But I got to a point in time where I kind of done what I'd done. You know, I think I was on the team that signed the first sponsorship deal with McLaren, Formula One comes back again, which Hilton still sponsors this day. And I got to a stage in my life where, you know, my then partner was pregnant with my daughter Ruby, and I needed to move on. And so I went to Swallow Hotels as their group marketing director. And I think from day one pretty much realised that whilst our CEO of the hotel division was very, very good, a guy called Peter Gray, I think the ownership wasn't very, very strong, and the business model was definitely not strong. And it was a real shame the business went into administration. It was my first experience of a business going into administration, really through a lack of cash, basically. And so, again, it was an experience having, you know, marketed Hilton, which is a brilliant brand. You know, we worked out, you put the Hilton logo on anything, it increases the value of 27% of revenue, to Swallow Hotels, where, you know, the thing hadn't really got any money, was really struggling for cash, was overexpanded way too quickly. And so I had to reset. And I went to, I got a job at Virgin, which I was really looking forward to working for Richard Branson. And then, you know, Virgin Active was run by a guy called Peter, an American guy, very, very passionate about the business. Really enjoyed my time there, but was attracted to private equity. And that's when I got into my first private equity gig, which was Nationwide Auto Centre. So I joined the management team of Duncan, Bill and Andy.
Wait, have we missed something out here? Because according to my research, you launched the world's first locksmith booking engine that nobody used.
Yeah. That was my third private equity gig, Vander Glazing and Locks. That was an interesting one. So when I was at Nationwide Auto Centres, you know, the senior management team, I think I was in my early 30s, and I think they were, you know, late 40s, and they put me through 7 interviews. You know, it was a 6-month process, and when they told me they got the job, I couldn't believe it. I thought, you know, I did, you know, I didn't believe they were going to pick me because I was put through so many different interviews, but I think it's because they were so impressed that they wanted everybody to sign up to me as an individual, which was great. And it was what I realised with Nationwide Auto Centres was, one, how to run a business. You know, Duncan, Bill and Andy run a really, really tight ship. You know, they didn't spend a lot of money, but they created a very, very profitable business. I mean, I came in midway through the investment, and you know, they were really, really good leaders of the business. I learned a lot from them, and I really enjoyed my time there. And in some ways, I wish it had been longer, but we sold the business to Halfords. And, you know, my if you like, my route, my career wasn't really about working for Halfords, if I'm honest with you. I'd been, you know, excited by private equity. It's very entrepreneurial. You're very, very aligned. It's all about growth. And so I was looking for my next private equity gig, which was Esporta. But when I was at Nationwide Auto Centre, I tell this story many times, but I was in an auto centre, posh word for a garage. It was actually in Derby, of all places. And I just remember sat there. I was responsible for the website. There's me and a guy called Matt Robbins who ran the website. We turned it from doing 6 million into 18 million. So at the time, the two of us had created a website that was turning over almost as much as Halfords.com was, but they had a team of 30, but different business, right? So you're gonna have more people. And I sat there, and the centre manager answered the phone, and the guy said, "Oh, you know, I'm on your website, can't book an MOT." And at the time, there was a 2-day time lag as to when you could book an MOT. "Oh, my MOT is going to run out, you know, can't you fit me in today?" And the centre manager quite right said, "Yeah." I'm thinking straight away, hang on a second, I'm bonused on the website revenue. That's website revenue we're missing. How can I attribute all of the sales I generate? And that's really where the first, if you like, starting point for automated analytics of attributing all of my sales back to my marketing started. It was funny because Matt and I were sat on my sofa at the time. I lived in Stratford-on-Avon. We were doing a load of content creation at the time, and we sat on my sofa because we decided, right, let's just shut ourselves away. We'll do it from home. He came round to mine. We're watching it. I think cricket was on the TV, and we went out for lunch, and we just started talking about it, saying, "Oh, wouldn't it be great if we could just attribute all the marketing we could do?" And today, that same sofa is actually in our meeting room in Doncaster. We've recreated my original lounge, as it were, a little bit different, but the original sofa's there. And that's where the seeds of how can I attribute all of my marketing, all the clicks that generate a sale for me, how can I see all of those? And so when I went to Esporti, we had a similar problem where, it's a gym chain. You generate a lead online, but then it would be an offline gym sale, although you can now buy gym membership online now. But you still get a lot of those sales coming through the door. How do you attribute those back to your marketing? Because, if you're attributing all the sales, that could have a significant impact on your marketing. There's this old adage of, 50% of my marketing works, I just don't know which 50%. That's what automated analytics is all about. We're trying to find, right, which bits work, and the bits that don't, just get rid of them, don't do them anymore. And then I went to, so we had a very successful exit of Esporta Health Clubs to Virgin, my old colleagues, which was a bit weird because my final day there, the management team from Virgin Active, which were the people I was working with a couple of years earlier, were all in the boardroom at Esporta, and we had a good chat, and it was good to catch up with them, and they made the business very successful. So then when I worked for Van der Glazing & Locks, created the world's first locksmith booking engine. It was like Uber of its time, where you could see the locksmith, and it was brilliant. No one used it. I was so gutted. I was like, because most people, right, I'm locked out of my house, where's a locksmith? How quickly can he get to me, type of thing. But then we realised that in certain circumstances, you're always going to want to phone and speak to someone to know they're going to turn up. And even now, a lot of our clients, as you would expect, because we're a phone-based solution, British Gas, we work for Dyno, 80% of their sales come from the phone line. Again, because they're emergency proposition. And I think about it, with my daughter Ruby, when there's a problem, she'll call me. When it's not such a big problem, she'll text me. It's very much human nature, I think, at the end of the day.
We've pretty much got through the pre-automated analytics life, but then there was a cruise that changed everything. What happened?
Yeah, the marketing forum. So invited to go on the marketing forum, which at the time I thought it was just a trip on a boat, and it's a networking thing where you state projects that you want to deliver and you have suppliers come and pitch you, type thing. I thought it was one day. I got on this boat, realised it was 3 days. So you can imagine I phoned up my ex-partner and told her I'm on this thing for 3 days and I'll be back till Saturday morning, which I completely miscalculated. Not the message I wanted to give, and as you can imagine, it didn't go down too well at the time. And I was on the boat, and it gave me some time to think. And it was then where I met my angel investor, Neil Campbell. And I met him for breakfast one morning. He was one of the suppliers that was pitching me for work. We just had a chat, and he said, what do you want to do moving forward? I said, well, I've got this idea for a business, and it's all about attribution. I want to attribute online marketing to offline sales. And he just literally said, well, why don't you go and do it? And it was one of those light bulb moments, And you can imagine I'm on this boat. It's moored outside of Guernsey. Unfortunately, Richmond Events, who run it, they don't do it on a boat anymore. They do it at the Grove in just outside of Watford. But I'm on this boat, and I'm thinking, well, is the drop going to kill me, or is it the swim to shore that's going to kill me? Because you're about 2 miles outside of Guernsey, and it ended up being a great couple of days. But it was that light bulb moment of what's stopping me. And so I think the boat docked at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. At 6:05, I literally ran off the boat, got to my car, drove to Newbury Services off the A34, stopped off at the McDonald's, which there's one up there where the petrol station is, and phoned my then partner and said, right, I'm quitting my job on Monday, and it was a decent salary where I was, so she thought I was mad, but it was just something I had to do, and I always remember that entrepreneurship. It always went through me. I remember when I was at Hilton, I went on holiday to the Maldives, and I took my my partner Jane to the Maldives, and I took a book with me about the story of Ryanair. I came back thinking I could set up an airline because Ryanair did it, so why can't I? And so I think my ex-partner Jane, she always knew I was going to do something. It was just a question of when and if. And I resigned. I think it was about a week or so later. And it was then a case of, right, I need to do this. And I incorporated, I think it was on the 5th December 2013, day after I spoke to Anas Dadwali, who was at Google, who's our first employee, still with us, 10 or so years later. And that's when I started on this road. And I remember I hired an office because I need to get out the house, because when I first started working on the kitchen table, partner thought I was, wasn't working and therefore could have did the washing or the ironing or whatever, but I need to get out and have a break. And I hired an office in Loversall Hall, which is on the outskirts of Doncaster, beautiful old building, full of ladybugs, no internet connection whatsoever, which I didn't realise until I rented it, or very limited. And so for the first 2 years, I was pretty much in the office, trying to get the tech to work. And it was very much, I could understand someone had made a call. I could understand the source of that call, but I just didn't know the content. So I started hiring people to listen to those calls. And the business got, when I say expensive to run, our operating costs were quite high compared to what I wanted them to be. And so I went on holiday to Benidorm, posh bit, the old town. And I can tell you exactly where I did it, the cafe, the seat I was sat at. I literally wrote our first algorithm, right? How do I score a call? How would I work out if a call's been answered, what type of call it is, and then the outcome of that call? How would I work it out? And I phoned up our then CTO, Andy. I was all excited. Andy, I've got this idea. And he's like, you're supposed to be on holiday. Yeah, I never go on holiday. And within a week, we got a working model up and running. And it really transformed the business, because I think up until that point, we'd been more of a media optimization company. We were selling leads. We were working for America's 4th largest franchise operator, a company called Neighbourly in the UK, doing okay. I was also doing a bit of consultancy, to bring a bit more revenue in. But I decided, working on other people's businesses was taking time away from working on my own. And that's when we got Maven to invest in the business and help us go from, we had, I think it was about £50,000 worth of recurring revenue to we've just got just below 3 million today. And so that year-on-year growth of 100% has just been stratospheric. And a lot of that is down to Maven. I signed pretty much my life away when I did the deal with them, because that's what you do with private equity. But I knew I could deliver for them, and I knew we'd deliver for them in spades. It was just having that capital to enable me to grow. It was a really big turning point for us.
So when did Call 360 come to life, and in simple terms, what is it?
So in simple terms is if you're a business today and you're manually listening to calls, Call 360 takes all of that away from you. So if you're in marketing and you're using a telephone number or even WhatsApp chat or even online bookings, we can actually track what they call the linear click, which is every click that leads up to that conversion. So a lot of models are based off last click. So the last click I've clicked on, that's what's converted that piece of business. What we are able to do is actually track all the clicks. So it might be a Facebook ad that someone sees, and then they go on Google Organic, and then they convert. We can actually see it's the Facebook ad that's driven that initial response. So in terms of tracking that if you like, that click traffic, that's the first part of the solution. Second part is we've got our own large language model, which means that, as I mentioned to you, the word error rate that we have is less than 6%, which is globally the best from what we can see at the moment. And so it means that when someone does phone up, or when your sales team phone out, rather than listening to that call to understand what's actually happened, it goes through our data classification tree, and we can tell you straight away. So was it a sales call? And if it was a sales call, did you qualify it? Did you convert it? What was the average invoice value? All of that we can take out automatically from the data that we generate. So it means that as a marketeer, you can see exactly what your return on investment is down to keyword. So you can bid for the keywords that work versus the keywords that don't. Likewise, if you're a salesperson, you can see how good your salespeople are when they're doing their outbounding or their inbounding. And what you'll often find in most organisations is they've got an attribution gap. So got a French company that we're working with at the moment. They generate a form fill from their e-commerce site, so half the revenue comes through quotes. That goes into a quote box. There's then an outbound call to that quote. So at the moment, all they can see is, right, we generated a form fill. What they can't see is the keyword that's actually delivered the sales from that outbound call. And that's what we're if you like, bridging the data gap, is we're able to cover that data gap by understanding that outbound call. Oh, right, that ended up in a sale. It was that G-click which created, or that keyword that created that sale. So therefore, let's upload that G-click back into Google, because that form fill's generated a sale rather than just a form fill conversion. So what that means is, for a lot of our clients, is they reduce their cost per sale dramatically and increase their return on advertising dramatically as well.
So before Call 360, then what is it that businesses were getting wrong? Is it what you're saying is it's more accurate now and they can put more
Correct.
investment into them ads because they know exactly them keywords and that?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Or those online channels. So if you're not tracking the linear click, you're tracking the direct response, if you're at the last click. But often a lot of social media and paid advertising actually generates that conversion. So one of the things that we spot is that Facebook doesn't always get correctly attributed, because often that's the first click. Someone will see a Facebook advert, click on your site, won't convert, go off, probably do some research on you, come back via Google Ads or Google Analytics. So you think it's, Google Organic or Google Ads. So you'll think it's Google Ads or Google Organic that's generated that sale. No, it's actually Facebook that's contributed to that. And so being able to see that entire journey, cookieless, because obviously less and less people are allowing cookies on their browsers, so your data becomes less accurate. We use a cookieless model, so it means that essentially your attribution data becomes more accurate, and therefore you can see, down to the pound and pence, dollar cent, what's giving you the greatest return on investment and what isn't. So if I take Dino, when we first started working with them, I think the site was doing about £600,000 a month. Now does about 1.6 million. Why have we increased it that much? There were two brand terms that they were using, that they could use that money elsewhere, generate a better response. They also made some changes to their sales journey to make it easier to convert customers. And so it's not just, the Google Ads optimization or Facebook optimization. Sometimes it's business process. But then when I look at, our compliance decision tree that we've created, is if you're running an FCA regulated business, so, maybe you're a broker, you've got to make sure that you're compliant all the time. How do you ensure that happens? Well, you're not going to listen to every single inbound or outbound call your company generates. You can't. You can't unless you've got teams and teams of people, but you can do it automatically using Call 360. So it's taken away that manual process. And that to me is the superpower of AI. A lot of people are worried that it's going to take jobs. I don't think it is. I think it's going to make your staff better, more productive. So instead of listening to 20 calls a day, we can now analyze 10,000 calls in 0.2 of a second. So your compliance team could be more proactive rather than, listening to calls. And it's that data creation that I think AI is brilliant at and what we focus on the most.
Was there ever a moment where you just sat down and thought, we're onto something?
Yes, but no, because I'm quite a humble person, if you get what I mean, is that...
You must have thought, we're onto something. You can still be humble and think, we're onto something here.
Yes, because I think the results that we've generated... So if I take Barchester Healthcare, one of our first ever clients, they were spending, I think it was about 28 million on staff recruiting agencies. I think they're now spending less than 2. And because they've used our recruitment solution, Talent Track, they've just been able to generate better quality hires for cheaper. It's costing them £5,000 to hire an agency a nurse through a staffing agency. Costs them less than £700 now using our tech. So there's big cost savings that people can make. And again, it's really getting rid of those inefficiencies, in terms of manual processes right the way through to inefficiencies in terms of buying media. So the third part of our solution is the programmatics, which then automatically buys your media on your behalf. So that keyword at the right time, that Facebook ad at the right time, so that it then takes away all the complexities of optimizing your media and does it automatically. So you can spend your time on improving the business rather than generating the data to find out where to improve the business.
When you launch a new product, do you ever get a little bit nervous? I actually read something that did you have like 500 signups in an hour and you thought that the system had broken?
Yep.
You called your dev and you was like, "Hey, I think the system's broken."
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, "No, Mark, this is legit."
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I think sometimes even we're surprised. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges is because we're, if you like, closing the loop on a data gap that organizations have. And sometimes people just, we just accept the numbers are the numbers. And when you see really what's going on, it's like, well, I thought that might be happening, but now I've got the data to prove it. But yeah, when we went live in America, we partnered with a company called Fourth, who they've got, I think they've got the biggest applicant tracking system in the States for quick service restaurants. So Christian, who's one of the founders of Fourth, was a big supporter of ours in terms of getting our tech within their tech. And then we worked with Christina, who's director of product, who's a great supporter of ours. And we partnered with them. And it was a case of their clients signing up to use our programmatic bidding for recruitment. And yeah, I've sat in my kitchen in the Sprotborough in Doncaster, and where the business started on a Friday afternoon. And I remember we went live, we sent it live, and it was at the end of June. And like we got a report that told us how many clients had signed up, and it was quite a rudimentary report. It just showed us a count and like the names of people basically. And I remember they'd sent the email out, to get the sign-ups, and I think it was like within the first half hour. I think we were aiming for 20 clients. And I think the first half hour, I think we've got like 40 or 50, and I'm thinking, right, something's up here. This isn't right. We've broken it. It's clearly like double counting, or it's something's wrong. And Ben, who's based in Asia, he's based in Thailand, although he's originally from Doncaster. I think it was his 9 o'clock at night. I phoned him saying, "Look, I think there's a problem here because there's no way we've got this many signups." And he's like, "No, we have." I'm like, "No, we haven't. Go check it." Anyway, it takes him, because he's gone out for dinner, so it takes him about half an hour, 40 minutes to go back home. I disturb him during dinner, go back home, start his laptop up, look at everything. And in between that time, we'd already breached 1,000 signups, right? Something, and it's definitely broken. I'm not worried about this. It's definitely broken. And he calls it back and said, no, we really have. And it was like, wow. And then literally sheer panic of, oh my God, we've got 1,000 clients in America. Right, we need to get ourselves set up. And Jason, our chief operating officer in the States, I remember calling him saying, "Have you seen this?" And he said the same thing. "Oh, it's broken. I said, it's not, it's true." And I think by the Friday night, we'd got to about 2,000 signups, and that's when the gin and tonic started flowing. And I was just like, I can't believe this. And every time I'm refreshing it, numbers are going up. I'm thinking, this is just mad. And then I think by the Monday morning, we got to about 3,000 signups. And I was already on a plane to America. I'd said, "Right, Jason, you need my help." And it was a real challenge. I mean, be careful what you wish for in some circumstances. It took us some time to work out and kind of cope with having that amount of clients land on your doorstep, let alone the billing issues and make sure billing worked and all those things, but just servicing those clients. But it was a great experience. I mean, I still think back to, did we bake it with 20 clients? And when you end up with that amount, and it was funny because I remember talking to Christian and Christina. And, I remember pitching them and the original idea of partnering with them, and they went away and had a thought about it. And, they were going to find America's best, and they were going to partner with someone who was already in America. And then they came back and, well, there's no one in America doing what you do, so we need to partner with Doncaster's best, which is when we started to believe that we had this kind of global, if you like, this global opportunity. But they've been fantastic supporters of ours and really, really helpful. But, it's been great. We say Pizza Hut in America, $1 million on their recruitment spend. We've helped KFC increase their hires. And when you're working with, such big brands, all starting off on your kitchen table in Doncaster, there's obviously a lot of pride in that. but also a lot of pressure as well, because you're now on a global stage, and you're not just dealing with UK companies. So all the complexities of running a global business, which I'd never done before, but threw myself into it, and it's been one of the most enjoyable experiences. Fraught at times, as Jason will attest to. We were very lucky in finding Jason. I think that's one of the things I've learned, because we tried to go live in America previously, and it just didn't work because it didn't have anybody on the ground. And I think we were very lucky in getting Jason, because he's a very well-travelled American. Very passionate, very, very supportive, and has been a great chief operating officer for us.
That's amazing. I mean, you've saved pizza £1 million. Just how?
$1 million. Well, they haven't had to spend as much money in their recruitment marketing as they had to previously, but got a 44% bump up. What we could see from the data that we were collecting was there were certain points in the day when they absolutely should advertise, and there were certain points in the day when they should not advertise, because it was just generating applications that were useless. And so the great thing about digital marketing, if you like, digital channels, is you can switch them on and off. Now, a lot of people, don't necessarily, I'm not saying they don't necessarily allow you to do that, don't have the functionality to do it. So switching off on and off an advert on Indeed, we're able to do on a daily basis. If you advertise directly with Indeed, you can't. It's either on or it's off, and it's generally on until your advertising budget runs out, which means that unless you're advertising with a lot of money, your adverts will run out at some point during the day. That's then an opportunity to advertise when there's less competition out there advertising. Also, I think, again, when you attribute the full journey, and that's what our platform can do. It can track an applicant right the way through to hire, and then use that data in a programmatic model. Often a lot of people can tell you, well, this is the source of your best hires, but then using that data to then buy the media moving forward, that's a lot more difficult, and that's our uniqueness, as it were. So really, we are middleware for ATSs, applicant tracking software, and CRMs. Because they're really good tools, but we plug a gap in the attribution. And, I never thought I'd go to Wichita in my life, but it's the home of Pizza Hut. And the original Pizza Hut store is there. I had my photo taken out of it last year. Funny enough, we've just won a new client in Ticket Socket in the US. And their guy is based out of Wichita as well. So I guess I'll be going back. But it's been a great experience to go out and meet clients and see the progress that we're making in the States.
It's all right. So talking about great experiences, every time I speak to you, it's like, Jordan, I'm in Monaco F1. I'm testing a Waymo car in San Francisco. I'm Italian this cars, and talk me through some of them experiences.
I fortunately, because I have a strong team behind me, I'm able to go out and see some of these things. So I got invited to go to San Francisco in March earlier on this year. It's one of the podcasts that we got coming up. I love tech, right? So yes, I'm in the tech industry, I understand that, but I love tech. And one of the things that I think demonstrates AI the best is the driverless cars that they've got in San Francisco. And I think it's, there's not many locations in the world that have these driverless cars. And so one of the benefits of going to San Francisco was that I could experience this tech. And it was pretty much the first thing I did was, other than dump my bags in the hotel, right, how do I get a Waymo driverless car? And it was a fantastic experience. It was a bit scary at first, actually. And if you know San Francisco, it is very up and down. It's hilly in parts and then flat in others. And there's one point where I'm going down this real steep hill, and it literally feels like I'm on a roller coaster. Like no one's next to me. The car's driving itself. It's pretty freaky, but what a great experience, and what a fantastic bit of tech. Now, unfortunately, I don't go to the airport, because to get to the airport, you've got to go on the freeway, which they're not licensed to at the moment. But around town, they really are good. Now, when people say, oh, well, it's going to come at a cost of taxi drivers, it's not. And you know why? Because there are some people that will use them, some people that won't. If you want to get somewhere quickly in San Francisco, don't pick a Waymo, because they drive like they've just passed the test, which is what you would expect. If you want to get somewhere quickly and you're in a rush, choose taxi driver. And I think you'll always have those choices with AIs, is that it's not going to replace everybody, or it's not going to replace certain industries. I just think it's going to be a complement to them at the end of the day. And that's certainly what's felt in San Francisco. And I hadn't been back since I think 2001 was the last time I went to San Francisco. And it's got its reputation in there, but it's Silicon Valley is an hour up the road. It's the home of Google and Facebook, and there's a lot of innovation there. And you can feel it when you land. You can feel it when you're walking around Union Square. It was a great situation to be in. And I met a lot of people. I was out there, I had quite a few meetings set up, and it was just great to kind of feel that innovation that I think the West Coast has in the States, and it was a great experience. Although the jet lag wasn't great coming back, I must admit. It's horrible, it's not brilliant. And I remember I was up at pretty much 3 a.m. every morning in the gym, and it was kind of like 10 o'clock over here. So that presented its challenge, but it was a great experience. And again, as because I'm the leader, I'm the CEO. It's my job to go out and network. It's my job to go out and meet as many people as I possibly can. And I think one of the things I don't really turn down that many opportunities. And so because we're in a unique situation, I think, because a lot of AI is theoretical, we're proven, if that, we're a real world example. I think that attracts a certain amount of interest in the business of how have you done it, what have you done, and the fact the uniqueness of coming from Doncaster. I get invited to a lot of things. I mean, we were in the top 50 fastest growing tech companies in northern UK that we got the accolade for a couple of weeks ago. I was nominated as the Ernst & Young, Entrepreneur of the Year, one of the finalists. Last year we were in the FTSE top 1,000, so Financial Times, sorry, top 1,000 growing companies. And those accolades are nice to have, but it's also a good endorsement from the people that work for us, my colleagues. It's endorsement of all the hard work they're doing, but it's also getting that stamp of Britain, UK out there at the end of the day, and showing them that we are global leaders in AI, which we very much are. There's some great tech in the UK, and we should be very proud of it.
You said you spend a lot of time just networking now. I heard a quote that said, your network is your net worth. Just talk us a little bit about how important that is. I know he was in Monaco F1 and he was actually chilling with the director of Hunger Games, right?
Yeah, Francis. Yeah,
Are we going to get him on the podcast?
Well, big ask. But I was fascinated because I'm not that creative. So I'm a great lover of art, but my first question is, where do you start? Like, do you start with like the sunset, the clouds? Where do you start? Whereas when I think about an algorithm or a business problem, I know exactly where I'm going to start, right? Well, let's do a research. Let's find out where the problem is, see if we can solve it, right? So I sat with Francis for probably about, I think he was thinking it was going to be like 10 minutes. And I think it turned into an hour's conversation. Like, where do you start filming a movie? And what I realized was it was so similar to product development that we employ. So, he would get the book, right, what do we want to keep? What do we want to film that's in the book? What characters have we got to feel for? So when we're developing something, right, what are we trying to solve? What are the features we want to bring in? How do we want it to look? The actual process of filming something is very, very similar. And Francis is an amazing director. I mean, he's directed I Am Legend. He's directed all but one of the Hunger Games. Fantastic to even just have a bit of exposure to that Hollywood experience, if you like. And, my mum always used to say to me, make a friend. Wherever you go, just make a friend. And that's followed through with me in everything that I do. And it's, for me, I agree with you. My father used to say to me, it's who you know, not what you know, son. And I think that very much comes through. The world is not as big as you think it is, and it really is who you know.
It's true. Yeah, my mum used to say, it's a small world, but you won't want to hoover it.
That's very true. Very true.
We're getting sort of to the end of this podcast, but what can we expect from automated analytics and Mark Taylor in the near future?
Well, in terms of our development of our tech, it never stops. In fact, sometimes I don't think we tell people enough of what we're developing. So the cookieless tracking gets launched fully from the 1st July. Clients are already testing it at the moment, which will give you that linear tracking. Texting will become part of our platform, so things like WhatsApp and even being able to take payment on WhatsApp would become part of our solution. So for us, really, with Call 360, it's turning more into an attribution solution for all of your channels, not just calls. On the recruitment side, it's all about generating hires faster, particularly in today's competitive labour marketplace, whether that be in the UK or the US. It's still trying to find those 10 applicants that you're going to hire, not the 100 that you're not going to. So for us, it's about improving the AI and what we're bringing in. For us, really, it's about building on the feedback from our clients. I mean, most of our development, I'd say pretty much 99%, is a client coming to us with a specific problem that we then solve. It just happens it's with AI, let's be honest with you. Could be the OKQ 3000, I wouldn't mind, but it's all about solving those and continue to invest in development and continue to invest in our products, because our retention is, it ranges between 100% and 97% each month. The last 2 months have been 100%. Once a client uses our tech, they generally stay for long periods of time, which is a great endorsement of the product. Shows you how sticky, how good it is, but we're always looking to improve it. And so for us, it's very much about, that continual product improvement and making it a better product. In terms of really for us as a business, we've applied for growth zone status for Doncaster, so we're part of the application for that. So we're very much the driver behind the initial expression of interest, and then engaging with South Yorkshire Mayoral Authority to put in the application for Doncaster, which would be super exciting. Doncaster is unique, and it's got 1.4 gigawatts of power that comes online next year. So the biggest issue in the UK, one, is the amount of power that we have. Two, is the storage of power. So you see all of these solar farms or even the wind power. The problem we've got at the moment is being able to store it. There's a batch plant that's going online in Doncaster in Thorpe Marsh at the end of next year. The government wants 500 megawatts, 100 acres of space by 2030 to house an AI server farm. We can deliver that in Doncaster at the end of next year, and it's green powered. So for us, I think that's a massive opportunity for Doncaster to lay its claim to being a global leader in AI. We've then got the development of Gateway 1, which is Grade A offices in Doncaster, which we're one of the founding tenants. That's also part of the AI growth zone as well. And it means that anybody that's investing into Doncaster, will get certain incentives to do so. And it takes Doncaster from being, I'm going to invest in Doncaster to, I'm going to invest in the UK, I'll pick Doncaster. And that to me is a massive statement, I think, and really has moved Doncaster. Someone mentioned to me the other day, actually, that 10 years ago, the appetite for Doncaster was to get a Pizza Express to come to Doncaster. Now we're reopening the airport. Now, hopefully we're putting a good option for the growth zone. And for me, I think there's some massive opportunities in the UK, certainly with what the government's doing in supporting AI. I think done a very good job so far in terms of supporting it. But over the next couple of months, they're really going to have to really, deliver on the promises that they've made. And I think that's quite critical for the AI industry, is that the government, they've made some very good initiatives. Now they've got to deliver against those initiatives. And so for me, the next 12 months, we'll very much see, that hopefully the government deliver on their promises.
Big future for automated analytics. What about you personally? What about Mark Taylor? What's planned for you? Any more sort of car testing? What's on the agenda?
So personally, for me, it seems to be quite motorsport orientated. So as we alluded to earlier, I started racing for an Italian car manufacturer, which at my time of age, if you like, was a bit unexpected. I'm testing a Formula One car in August, which I'm really looking forward to. I've wanted to do this since since I was about 7, and I saw my first Monaco Grand Prix. It was 1982 Monaco Grand Prix. Keke Rosberg won it. I remember watching the Grand Prix and just being fascinated by it. So I'm going to test a Formula One car, and hopefully over the next 12 months get to race at Le Mans, not the 24-hour race, but at the go-kart track. Hopefully get a chance to do either a European or international round there. It's something I'm really looking forward to doing. It's funny because I thought that America and the UK was enough for us. we probably are going to be expanding into to France. We are live in Germany and Poland. We're also taking a look at the Middle East at the moment because NVIDIA have just set up a fantastic facility out in the Middle East. And so we're certainly looking at that as an opportunity. And for me, it's I'll never stop. I remember we had a colleague who worked for us for a couple of years ago, and he, we were talking about targets. He said, what happens when we hit that target? Well, we hit the next target, and then we hit the next target, and we used to joke about it, but we never stop. And I don't intend to. I love my business. I'm very lucky, and I say this to my kids. Find something you love, and the money will follow. My daughter's very passionate about hair and beauty and nails, and she's launched a very successful business. My son's very much into science, and so they'll find something to do that they love, and I'm in that position. I'm very lucky, which is why it's not difficult to put the hours in, and I love solving problems at the end of the day. So for us, it really is about continuing that journey, and it's exciting in the day. It's exciting to be talking about America. It's exciting to talk about the Middle East, about Europe, and so for us, really, it's continuing that year-on-year 100% growth that we've been achieving over the past 4 years, and continuing that for the next couple of years, and making sure that we're aligning ourselves with a good quality team and adding to the team when we can, and continue that growth.
You just mentioned your kids there. I read that your daughter Ruby did work experience with you.
Yeah.
What do you think she learnt from you?
It's not as easy as it looks, and Dad works pretty hard, I think. Those are the two things she said. I loved it. I loved her coming in. If I could have Ruby work for us every day of the week, I would have it. Those people that don't want their kids in their business, I don't understand it. She did a brilliant job, and it was great to spend that time with her. But she's got her own life to lead at the end of the day, and she's got her own path to go, which I fully understand. But it's great having come in and doing her internship. It was funny because her cousin Colby, he came in and did his work experience with us. He was doing his A-levels, I think, at the time, and the deal was, right, he can't stay. He's got to go back to school. And I think within the first week, he was already, can I stay? Can I have a job, please? And I remember phoning up his dad saying, look, I know we agreed, but he's been quite persuasive. What do you think? And he's now working in the marketing department at Jet2. He did his apprenticeship with us. He's very successful, done very well for himself. And I'm pleased that I was part of his journey at the end of the day, of getting to where he wants to get to. But my kids are my biggest motivation at the end of the day. And they're the reason I work hard, because I want them to have options in life, like I had options when I was growing up. So I think it's very, very important. And it was a great summer when she came into work, but no, she just passed her beauty or hairstyling qualifications, and she's qualified as a nail tech as well. She'll do very, very well.
Good for her. So, season 2 of this podcast.
Yeah.
What can we expect?
Well, it's a little bit different. So one, we're in these delightful surroundings, so we've upgraded our package, as it were. We've got for a serious upgrade. So it's interesting. So I wanted to show people the Waymo experience. So I think it's the next episode that's coming up, and it really was a fascinating experience to experience that tech. We've then got a few of our clients, Richard, who's been a client for about 12 months now, talking about his success. I learned something new from him. He's actually a musician, a recorded musician, so I never knew that about him. And then Mark, I think he's episode 3, he's been a client of ours twice now. Very, very good marketeer. Gives some really, really good insight. And then we've got some other people that join the podcast later, like Lord Ranger, who's going to tell us about how he implemented the Oyster card on the tube, which Jason, our chief operating officer in the States, is very delighted with, because in the States you generally have to pay with dollars or cents. Over here you can just tap and go, which he's super impressed with. So it's a bit of a different season, bit more professional, but I'd liken it to how automated analytics is going. Is I'm really looking forward to this season and the next couple of seasons.
Don't tell us about Bumble.
Don't tell us about what?
Bumble.
Bumble. Bumble, yeah, can't. It's his bloody fault. Do you remember that train ride to Bristol? We went to Bristol.
Wingman?
It's a fucking long way, right? And on the way back, I was chatting, and he was like, "Right, let's do it." And we used ChatGPT to write my dating profile.
So right, what?
Right, my dating profile. He was. I live my life like a Formula One race, fast paced, usually with pit stops in nice locations. if you're up for a bit of banter, come and join the ride or something like that. I can't remember. I used it. Honestly, it was fucking great. You're gonna have to write the next one actually.
What would you say is like the craziest thing you've used AI for? Have you ever? I've actually used AI to give me advice on my relationship.
Really?
Yeah, but it's also very biased because I've actually said to her, look, I've gone through our argument. This is what ChatGPT said, and she said, well, actually, based on what it's told me, it's also been biased to me as well.
Yep. That's the issue you're going to have with AI is bias, and I don't think people understand that. It's like the BMI index. It was first established by measuring 2,000 white males. So if you're a white male, it's accurate. If you're not a white male in the age range that they tested, it's not going to be accurate. It's got a bias in it. So, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges with AI is the bias that goes into the model. So, for me, and that's where regulation needs to come in. It needs to understand, like, is the bias, in the, and what's the model been based on? Because it can fundamentally change the outcomes. And you think, my God, as you've just said, what it said is it actually accurate? Is it true? And they call it data labeling. So that BMI index is basically you're labeling data. Get that wrong, your model's wrong, it's inaccurate, but you'd believe it because it's come out, and it's giving you that answer. What's the craziest thing I think the craziest thing I've used AI for is to write my dating profile. I think it's pretty much the craziest thing.
I've been getting discount codes off it. Not in it.
Well, it's funny because they're saying that 10% of searches were done within an AI interface, so it's like ChatGPT, and so I don't think you're going to get 100% of searches using AI, but I think what you are going to get is searches going to become, because as our searches become more complex, you're going to get AI to answer that. So if you say, plumber Doncaster, there's no AI answer for that. It's just they give you a list of plumbers. But I can see in the future where, well, I'd like a plumber in Doncaster that's between this price range, that's got this rating on Trustpilot, that's been established at least for 10 years. So your requirements are greater. And therefore, that's where I think AI will come in terms of, right, here's the plumber for you, or here's the plumbers for you. And so I think the search gets more and more complex, and your parameters change. You put more parameters in it. That's where AI search, I think, will come in. I don't think it'll take it over fully. I also think there is this reluctance of, well, actually, how accurate is it? Is it going to give me the actual right answers, the bias? Because that's the one thing that you'd argue that Google search has bias in it, originally without AI, because it was based on, the quality of your site, your backlinks. They were looking at various kind of touch points that rated your site highly. AI, there's less known, but what is the bias within that model? You don't necessarily know what that bias is, but it can still affect the outcome of your search. So I think that's one of the challenges that we've got, and it's almost understanding what the model is based off. I think that's one of the things that Google needs to answer about Google search. Now you're starting to see a lot of AI answers. Okay, so how is that result being generated? Where are you pulling that data from? Why are you pulling that data? I think that's one of the things they've got to solve at the moment.
How long till you can prompt AI and say, here's my diet plan, I've got a £100 budget, find me the best online food shopping deals and have it to me ASAP to my address, and it just literally buys your diet plan?
So I think you can do that now. How accurate it's going to be, it'd be worth testing it. And that's a lot of the time I'm testing different things to see actually how accurate is that AI prediction. So you can ask it to do that now, but will it be the cheapest, the best, the most nutritious? It'll be what it thinks is, won't necessarily be what is actually the right option for you. And this is where, with it's artificial intelligence at the end of the day. It's not artificial consciousness. And there's a difference between the two, which is why AI will never replace human beings, because we've got this thing called common sense, which you can't really teach a computer common sense, because we can think for ourselves. AI is based on predictions. It's based on previous data. So I don't, I think you will struggle to get, 100% accuracy like a human being is. So if I take the Waymo cars, fantastic cars, right? If you get 3 of them at a junction, they stop. Don't know which one to let first. And so even with the Waymo cars, there is someone in a control center, who is looking at those cars and can manually override them. But you see it all the time on YouTube. You can see literally where you've got 3 Waymo cars pulling up to a junction and they're stuck, and I don't know which one goes first, because usually what they do is follow the rules of the highway code, who got there first and all that kind of stuff in America. But you've also got images of a Waymo car going around in circles in a car park because it doesn't know what to do. But a human would know what to do, because they'd know to drive and exit the car park. And that's where I think this artificial intelligence versus artificial consciousness, you won't get that. Take the Elton John scenario that I gave you earlier. His music could be sampled and he not earn any right out of that. But that, again, that's a computer program sampling something he's created himself to make it slightly different. Still needed that music being created in the first stage for the model to work. And yes, you will get models that potentially will think for themselves, but again, it'll be based on previous data. But because we've got common sense, we can already do that already. And that's why I see it as a bit of a superpower rather than it being something that's going to cost jobs and hold people back.
Daniel Priestley is often saying AI can do this, it can do that, but it can't be you. The best way to protect yourself from AI in 2025 is build your personal brand.
Yes.
What's your thoughts on that? And what advice would you give to people that are like scared about AI?
So 2 questions there. So first thing is, totally agree with you in terms of your personal brand. I think that's, we've recognised that even when we post on LinkedIn as a company, we get more views as if it was me posting, and I am posting sometimes the same content. So definitely, it's about your personal brand. I mean, you just got to look at Stephen Bartlett for what he's done as Diary of the CEO, which I think great podcast. And I think he was one of the first to really do it in the style that he's done it in. I think he's done a brilliant job. So in terms of protecting yourself from AI, I think really it's understanding where your data is being used, and you'll be quite surprised how much data there exists on you. So, for example, I don't have any loyalty cards. So I don't have a loyalty card. So one of the things I also do is turn off the mic on Facebook Messenger, so I don't allow it, so that I don't get served ads based on conversations. And it was funny because I went to Harrison College. It's a specialist college in Doncaster. Did a great job for kids between 16 and 18, that have got ADHD and the like. And they were asking me, we had a conversation about In-N-Out Burgers, which is an American restaurant brand. And then suddenly on Facebook, we're getting targeted with ads. That's their AI algorithm listening to you because you've got the Messenger microphone allegedly on. And so for me, I'm very protective. I don't have, like I say, a loyalty card with any of the supermarket brands, for my fuel or for anything, because I'm not saying that data's being used to profile me in a negative way. It's just one way of protecting me from being profiled. But at the end of the day, we are being profiled because every time I go in and out of the UK, my picture's being taken and with facial recognition to get through passport control.
That's interesting. Let's talk a little bit about AI hacks. Last year, my business partner over in Sydney now, he said, right, for the team, we're all going to get some personality tests, which sort of displays your strengths, your weaknesses, blah, blah, blah. Then we're going to create a business goal. And then we're going to create individual KPIs based on this personality test to who's going to be best for that role in order to achieve that goal.
Yep.
So I thought that was a really interesting AI hack. But from your experience, is there anything that you swear by in terms of AI that you do on a regular that you can sort of share with the audience?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I use ChatGPT quite a lot purely because of writing correspondence. So, if I've got a letter, important letters to write, I'll start off in ChatGPT and then check it myself, which is known as a supervised model. But one of the things I really love is Waze, which is it's basically a direction like a sat nav type of application that uses AI to predict your journey times. But I think it's great because you get warnings of potholes and traffic and stuff like that. And I downloaded it last year after some cajoling by a friend of mine. We were driving through France, and she suggested that I used it. It's a brilliant tool, and that's where you can go and talking about the Waymo, the Waymo driverless car. It's just a cool bit of tech, a great implementation of AI. And there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more advances that we're going to make in medicine and healthcare through AI. Not necessarily predicting, but actually helping doctors get to a better diagnosis quicker. I think at the end of the day, and there's some really, really interesting tech and tools that have been developed, in the healthcare sector, which I think will have a big impact. And it's one of the things that we're looking to. We're looking to work with the NHS at the moment. At the end of the day, we save a lot of our clients a lot of money, on their advertising costs. We'd love to do the same for the NHS on some of their operating costs.
Do you think ChatGPT can be a little bit reckless in terms of like its copyright policies? Because I can literally go onto apple.com, print screen a section of a sliding banner, stick it into GPT and say, write me some custom code for my Shopify website. It knows full well it's off the Apple website, but where's the protection against Apple's code that it's built? And if I find some creative where it could be some artwork of Nike products, I can put that into GPT and say, put my logo on it, Seven Studios. Where's the sort of protection and copyright with AI? Are we there yet? How's that look?
And I think that's the challenge that I mentioned earlier that Elton John mentioned. So I think copyright's one of the biggest issues. So whatever you put into ChatGPT, it is taking a copy of that. So if you've got any code or anything that's super sensitive to you as your business, you've got to be aware you're putting it into the ChatGPT model. So they're taking a copy of that. So as a business, you've really got to decide actually how much sensitive information do we want to even put into ChatGPT. And I know of companies that have implemented AI within their business, primarily ChatGPT or the Microsoft equivalent, and not realised actually you've got to be quite careful, because the more sensitive information you put in there, someone else can have access to that. So we have rules and limits in terms of what we allow our staff to do. But the copywriting issue is exactly as you highlight. Someone's been paid to do a very good job of creating that banner, and someone owns the copyright of it, and you've just created and added a slightly different version using ChatGPT. And this is where I think the copyright argument comes in, because, and it's what Elton John pointed out, is someone sampling my music, putting it through AI to make it slightly different, and I don't earn a royalty off that because I am the model, if that makes sense. My music was the model. It's why Getty Images created an AI picture creation tool. So you put in it, what you want the picture to be. So, sky at night in San Francisco, and they've based that model off, hundreds of millions of images that they own the rights to. They've had other people trying to download all of their images to create a similar model, and obviously that's breach of copyright. So I think the copyright law is really aware, it's a bit Wild West at the moment, and that's where I really think, the governments of the world need to crack down on that, because I just don't think it's fair, taking someone's work and re-engineering it, at no cost.
That's interesting. I've got a really personal question I need to ask you now. When will enough be enough with LinkedIn AI written captions?
So that's one of the things I don't use. So, and it's funny when you say about LinkedIn captions, that there's whilst you think being an AI innovator, we'd use AI for everything, I don't, because some things it's good for, some things it isn't. It's funny, I saw some content on Facebook that was talking about Lewis Hamilton, and exactly the same content was presented to me a day later with the word Lewis Hamilton removed and Max Verstappen. You could see it was plagiarised. And I think, you know, people that use those LinkedIn captions at the end of the day, that's a volume play. It'll lose its stickiness. It'll lose its ability to capture people pretty quickly. There's nothing compensates for human thought. That's why I said the difference between artificial intelligence and human consciousness at the end of the day. We're far better creatives than we think we are. And it's one of the things that I don't use because I like to be authentic. I like people to know it's literally me posting on LinkedIn. It's me. I don't always get it right. It's the odd spelling mistake in there, as we know, but it's genuine and authentic. And I think that's what's the difference in today's society, is being genuine and authentic.
I think there's a massive gap there to be your authentic self, because if I go onto LinkedIn now, I see AI post, someone commenting with an AI comment.
Yep.
I see my friends who have been to the studio many times commenting saying, looks a great space. It's not even them writing it.
Yep.
And I'm like, where is the real authentic posts? And that is the problem that we've got,
Yep.
that we have got today, isn't it? So based on everything you've learned in your career, before automated analytics, if you could give any advice to younger self, what would that advice be?
I think it's being grounded, and it's being grounded in the numbers. It's great to get feedback and to be introduced to entrepreneurs and in Doncaster, I regularly get asked the question. I'm thinking about raising some money. For me, it's start with your business plan first. Start with what I would call a proof of concept. Show that whatever you're looking to create actually can generate revenue and can generate profit. Because I think gone are the days where people would invest money on an idea. I think it's now about, well, is that idea actually going to make money or even generate revenue? And so for me, it's having that plan. And occasionally get approached by people who are expecting that, as part of an investment round, they're going to get paid a fortune. I earned less than I did when I was 32 because I believed in myself and I was willing to take a pay cut because I knew I was going to get a return on investment from my investors. So whilst to some it might have been seen as risky, well, I knew I was going to deliver, so I didn't see it as a risk for me. But I think at the end of the day, it's coming up with that minimum viable product, which is what a lot of people talk about, and making sure you've got something that can actually get traction almost before you're looking at a funding round, really. And I think, our perception in the UK is very much, we've got our feet on the ground, in the States that, there's more money, but they're looking for bigger ideas at the end of the day. And we are very, very good at starting companies up, I believe. I think we need a bit more support around how we help entrepreneurs grow. One of the things we're looking at bringing in within the growth zone is an incubator, which, America has got a number of tech incubators. I want Doncaster to be one of the tech incubators, one of the best ones in the UK, and give something back at the end of the day, because I've got a lot of experience. And I think one of the things I would have told myself, younger, is focus on that idea that you and put your heart and soul into it.
Well, look, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I could literally go on all day. I don't know what we're like for time, but so next time, episode 2, season 2, you'll be the man asking the questions. There's a lot of exciting things to look forward to, but yeah, thank you very much. Looking forward to partnering with you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, let's have a successful season 2.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jordan. Thanks very much.